Welcome, wherever you are joining us from in the world. We're really excited you're here. I am Sarah Doody, and you're here today because you RSVP'd for our UX job search Q&A. And really the goal for today is to really paint the picture for all of you of where each of these people was in their career journey, whether it was a couple of months ago, a couple of years ago, what they were struggling with, what was working, not working, what happened when they joined my program, Career Strategy Lab, and sought help with their job search, and then how that kind of has impacted their confidence in their portfolio, resume, etc., in their ability to, in some cases, get interviews, in their ability, in other cases, to get job offers. So first up, we have Melp, product manager with 6 years of experience in UX research and software development. And Melp, to start us off, why don't you just share a little bit about your career journey and situation, let's say, before you heard about and joined Career Strategy Lab? Like, just paint that picture for us so everyone knows kind of where you came from.
Yeah, sure. So I don't remember when I found out about CSL. It must have been so many years ago. And I just remember, I think I followed Sarah on LinkedIn and stuff. And I was laid off from my last job in about 2022 when like a bunch of the mass layoffs started happening. And I just remember Sarah kept saying, like, you don't need a master's degree or you don't need more education to get hired. You just need to communicate it better. And then I just remember thinking, like, okay, keeping that in mind, I think I still want to get my master's. And so I went and got my master's in UX. And throughout that journey, I realized I wanted to go into product management because I care about business too. But yeah, I'm out the other side and just even worse, I can't find a job. Like, it's even harder than before I started my master's, and that's just like a big shock to me. And so I decided to join CSL because I at first I joined because I was like, okay, I want a job right now. But I think a lot of people's experiences, once you join CSL, it's not just about getting a job right now, it's about finding the right job.
I I want to emphasize that point you just made, like, not about getting the job right now, but getting a job that is right for you. And I'm curious, like, what does right for you mean?
So I think I'm still figuring that out. I know I already did the career compass sprint and stuff, but for me, like just recently before I joined CSL, I was just applying to everything. I was like, I don't want to be a product designer, but if I get that job, sure, I'll take it. And then now I'm more like, why would I take a job that doesn't like put me on the path to like where I want to be in the future? So I think there was like that kind of mindset shift. I think I'm still figuring out like exactly what that looks like.
I'm curious, you said you decided to go get a master's degree. Where did you study? I forget.
Oh, so I just graduated from the University of Michigan at the School of Information with a degree in UX research and design. And it was weird because I already had like 4 years of experience in UX, and then coming back to school, I actually didn't learn that much. So, but I took a lot of electives in business and entrepreneurship, and that's where I really learned the most
And so when did you graduate?
this past May.
Okay.
And just been job searching, nothing working. And so I was like, I think I knew it would be really difficult because for the past year, I've been job searching, applying to hundreds of jobs, getting nothing. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try a different strategy. And so that's when I joined CSL.
Yeah. And one of the things, just for everyone here who's not aware, like, one of the first things that we do in Career Strategy Lab is kind of have you do a research project on yourself, essentially, so you can do a lot of what Melp just mentioned, which is really hone in on where are you right now? Where do you want to be in the future? And of course, the future might change, but similar to a product, like, your career needs a roadmap too. And so, Melp, based on that first sprint, for everyone that's not familiar, we organize everything you do in Career Strategy Lab into sprints. And so, in that first sprint, like, is there anything that stands out to you in terms of helping you hone in on some clarity around where you want to be?
So I think Yes and no. So I think there's still some things that I don't know for sure just because I haven't experienced it yet. For example, like people are like, "Oh, do you want to work in a big company or a small company or like what industry?" I think I'm just very open to a lot of things because I just don't know 100%.
Yep.
But I at least know myself pretty well, especially after that first sprint. So like for people who aren't super familiar, the first sprint, we just do a deep dive into like ourselves, like what kind of projects do we really enjoy working on? What do we not really enjoy working on? And we just do this so that we can understand ourselves better, like to help inform what kind of companies you'd want to work at and which kind of environments you would thrive in. And so I used to be, after getting like rejected so much, after being fired and being laid off, I just had like a lot of like low confidence in myself, like, oh, I work in this specific way, who's going to put up with me, stuff like that. But actually after, starting CSL and like going through the mindset calls, I've just realized like, okay, like I am a very specific way and that can be a strength if I'm in the right setting. And so it just helps me feel confident that like I am the right fit for like very specific things. Did I answer your question? Sorry, I hope I'm not
Yes.
going to tangents.
No, no, you totally answered it. I think describing it as kind of like a doing research and a deep dive into yourself is exactly what it is. And to your point earlier of, pivoting your job search so you're not applying to everything, but you're really applying to things that align with what you want. The way that you get clear on what you want is doing this first sprint that Melp just described. So, yeah, and I think the thing that you hit on too was like the confidence element and kind of thinking, oh my goodness, because of XYZ in my past jobs or, different ways you work, etc., you can start to believe this narrative like those skills are not going to be attractive to other companies, etc. And I think there's this shift that happens for many people, and it sounds like you, where it shifts from like those are a negative to those are actually a superpower, and I'm going to own those things. And when you go into then working on your resume and your portfolio and all those things with that attitude of, no, I'm going to own those things about my past and my current strengths, it really does change like the quality of your resume and your quality of your portfolio and frankly how you show up in interviews too.
Yeah, definitely. And I could talk a bit more about that. I think some very specific things is that, I'm not someone who can just shut up and do the work. Like, I will be like, oh, why are we doing this? How is this contributing to the bigger picture? How is this helping the company? And so, a lot of bosses and managers in the past have been like, just be quiet and do it. And so, like, after that, I've just been like, oh, I'm just a really difficult person to work with. And that has
Mm,
been like sitting with me for a long time. But then now that I think about it, I'm like, no, I'm someone who challenges things and someone who can like actually bring a really positive impact if I'm in the right environment. And so
I,
now, like, I just really look for that right environment because I think, I would be so miserable at a company where they just keep telling me to shut up and do the work. Some people are really good at that. Like,
yes.
I respect it so much, but that is just not me.
Well, Melp, you and I have something in common because I I was recently working on, let's say, a special project, and it's no longer happening, but I was too told I was difficult to work with and a diva. And I'll send you a link to this Medium article I just wrote, but I was like, this is wild. And divas are the people that get stuff done? So I'll send it to you
Yeah.
after.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like, I think I did read that article and
Okay.
it just like resonated so much with me because I mean, I've never thought of myself as a diva. I just thought of myself as like difficult to work with, even though like I think of myself as a highly collaborative person, but I need to be in that right kind of environment.
No, you were just talking about like this you always kind of thought, "Oh, I'm difficult." And then that reframe of like, "No, I'm a diva." And we'll link to the article, but essentially I was inspired to write this article because I'd also read a different article about how Eric Schmidt from Google in one of his books, he wrote, "You should hire the divas because the divas are going to be loud, but they're going to be loud about the things that are really important. And if you don't listen to them, you're going to have problems, essentially." So I thought, well, if Eric Schmidt from Google is saying we should hire the divas, then I'm going to write my diva article. So we'll find it and we'll link it to you guys after.
Yeah,
um,
definitely. I think one of the things that is like kind of my pet peeve is when a company just like keeps going in one direction because that's just what they've been doing, even though there's no like proof or no reason that this is actually helping the company overall. And
yeah.
then I'll be the one that's just like, okay, I think we should try this or this or this, or like I'll really try to understand. And I think when people above me don't understand either, and they're just listening to the people above them, and like nobody knows why they're doing it this way, I cannot work in an environment where I don't see the like impact and results of the work that I do. And so that's just really important to me.
Yeah. Well, we're going to come back to you and hear more about like where you are in your sprint journey inside Career Strategy Lab. So let's continue on our discussion kind of with like a general question. And we talked a lot about kind of the transformation of some of your portfolio, some of the resumes, some of the results in job searches, etc. But Melp, I'm curious, like, how would you say you have changed kind of like personally between before you joined Career Strategy Lab and where you are now in your CSL? That's our short acronym for Career Strategy Lab.
So I'm actually, even though I've been around for a few months already, I've been working through the materials like really slowly, really thoroughly. And so I've also skipped around a bit. So right now I'm on the resume sprint, but I've finished most of the LinkedIn and the Career Compass. And yeah, sorry, what was the question again? Just like what's the
Like,
difference?
well, yeah, we could talk about, based on going through LinkedIn, are you noticing more people reaching out to you? Or the other direction we could go is like, how have you changed personally through all this?
I guess like I spent a really long time on the very first sprint, which is, your career compass, like what do you actually want to do in life and with your career? And I've just like stopped to really like think deeply about like who I am, what I want, stuff like that. And I think I've also just like every week I attend the mindset calls and we just like talk about like a lot of issues like imposter syndrome, confidence, stuff like that. And so I feel like I'm starting to get more confident in my work and like who I am, how much I've done, because it's really easy to just forget about that and just be like, oh yeah, I'm not qualified. And then like you look at all your credentials and like you look at everything you've done and then be like, oh, I've done a ton of projects. Like actually, I'm pretty qualified. So
Yeah.
I feel like my confidence is slowly going up, but it's not immediate. I think stuff like this is going to be a journey, many year long journey, because you don't just become confident overnight. And it really, I'm hoping that like, after the portfolio sprint, like seeing what I did in actual stories, I'm assuming that is where my confidence will pick up, but I don't know. I hope that answered it.
My hunch is that the answer is yes, that when you start writing those case studies and think more deeply about what you did, you're going to think like, wow, I'm so badass. You know, I thought I was badass before, but now I'm really badass, I think that's probably what you're going to think after you do your portfolio.
Yeah, I think it's just I've just been, working through CSL stuff pretty slowly because I've been freelancing on the side, and so I've just been busy with other things. So yeah, I just haven't gotten as far as like other people have.
Yeah. And everyone goes at their own pace. Like people who are maybe not employed right now and not freelancing might be treating this like a full-time job and they'd be going faster. And other people go at different paces. And that's just kind of life. But one question I want to ask you really quick was, you got your master's from the University of Michigan. And, universities often have resources to help people after they graduate to get hired and stuff like that. I'm curious, did you leverage any of those things, or what about CSL might be different from what that school or that program offered you, if you don't mind me sharing, or if
Yeah,
you don't mind
definitely.
sharing?
So I even enrolled in a course that was like about career, and like it was all about like it was very similar to CSL, and it was just like a whole class about that, but it didn't help me. I think because the job market right now is still like really rough. So like I just like followed all of that, and I think it wasn't enough because I have been applying for the past year and have just gotten like nothing.
Hmm.
And I do make use of the career development office. I meet with them. I met with them a lot, like in the last semester, maybe like once a week to just be like, hey, go over my resume. And so actually starting CSL, I had a pretty solid resume already that I had just been like fine tuning for the past 2 years. But what's interesting is, when I joined CSL, actually, like Sarah, your method is like kind of different. And I think that's what stood out to me is, I've just been trying all these things that have been recommended by so many people. And I'm just like, okay, let's try a different approach. And so, yeah, I think I'm like really excited about just doing it a different way and hoping that that will work out.
Can you say more about what you mean by how our approach is different out of curiosity?
I think CSL is actually like really, really, really in depth. And I think this is something that I didn't realize before I joined. I was just like, oh, yeah, you just kind of like go over this and then go over this and then go over this. And I actually spent 2.5 months on the very first sprint, the career compass sprint,
Mm.
because there is just like worksheets and worksheets and worksheets. And there's just like so much stuff to think about and so many like different tasks. Like I was so intrigued by like the mentor model one, where it's like you think about people like professionally who you just like really look up to, and like what do you really like what do you really like about them. And a lot of the times it's because you have something that they have inside you, and so it's kind of like a little bit of a predictor. It kind of shows you the direction you want to move in, and then you can move in that direction. And just stuff like that, that is not covered by a lot of like career coaches and
Mm.
like career specialists. And so I just feel like CSL just goes into so much depth that like didn't even happen in the class that I took.
That's cool to hear. And I think a theme that is coming through, our entire discussion today is this really critical step in identifying more specifics about you and your strengths and your, the career roadmap, if you will, for I call it the product of you, right? Because we all make product roadmaps for the products we work on. But when was the last time you ever made a product roadmap for your career, right? I'm guessing not before a career strategy lab is my guess. I I love that summary you did because I think, confidence is probably something we could stay and talk about for 3 hours here. I'm sure everyone on this call probably has hesitations and worries around confidence. And I think one of the things that's so important is number one, not waiting until you feel confident to take action. You can be writing words on your resume and words in your portfolio, et cetera. But if you don't believe them, the words are probably not going to do justice to your actual skills. And when you get to an interview, you're definitely not going to exude the confidence that you need to communicate how awesome you are.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I've been feeling that throughout my journey too. Like before I joined CSL, like, because I'm switching into product management. So at first I was like, okay, I need to get like this certificate, this certificate, this certificate. I need so much training to do it. And just by like thinking about like my experiences and the projects I've worked on, I've realized I have the experience already. And that's something that no one could convince me that before.
Yeah, when you take the time to really think through what you did beyond just pulling together a bunch of deliverables and throwing them into a portfolio and just giving really generic, vague explanations of it, but thinking through, how this impacted the team, the company, the users, why you made certain decisions, how you handled that time when some stakeholder went off the rails or, you ran into some problem with testing something that maybe you designed that turned out, oh, no one could use it after usability testing. Like, how did you handle that? Thinking through all of those things does exactly what you said, Melp, like help you realize how awesome you are. And then that comes through in all of your resume, portfolio, et cetera, and in those interviews too.
I think a lot of people, like a lot of the audience, probably don't know this, but Sarah really emphasizes doing a PDF version. And just really because making a website takes so much time that it's not a good investment of your time. It could be better spent doing other stuff. And I think that's just the general like mindset of CSL is just like how can you like maximize your time, maximize the
Mhm.
effectiveness of what you're doing. And I just thought that was like really valuable too, because it kind of like goes into other things, other parts of my life, you know?
I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm so glad I don't have to answer the question. But it's so true that, I called this whole thing Career Strategy Lab, not just for fun, but because it's about strategy. It's about not just going through the motions and, ticking boxes and doing checklists, but I literally designed it like I thought about the journey of getting hired and how busy and sometimes burnt out people are and the amount of time they have to do all this. And like Melp said, a big part of it is helping you focus on the things that you need to do in the order that you need to do it so that they give you the most ROI for the time and effort that you put into it, essentially. So that's why it's called Career Strategy Lab. But the final question is really, what advice would you have for anyone who's kind of on the fence about jumping into something like Career Strategy Lab? And or like what would you tell them when they join? If you had a tip for them, you can answer one or both of those questions.
Yeah, so the one that jumps to mind is, I've mentioned I spent 2.5 months on the very first sprint, and that's because I was just like, so focused on the details. I tried to make it perfect and tried to revise a lot of stuff, but everyone, like all the coaches, really advocate for like MVP, like the minimum viable product, or the BFD, the bad first draft. So everyone was like, get your bad first draft out there. Let's take a look at it. Because if you put out like a very early version and get feedback, then you can just make those changes instead of spending so much time perfecting it and just wasting a bunch of time. So I feel like the hours that we do put in are like very efficient and effective.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, like, just so transparently and openly about your very personal experiences and your struggles and, how you really leveraged the process, so to speak, to get to where you are today. Okay, guys, well, let's wrap it up then. Hopefully it just gave you some hope in the job market, etc., because I think, in general, negative stories get more likes, etc., right? And I think it like pushes down all the positive stories that are happening in the UX and product world. And so that's part of the reason why we do these sessions, to help you connect in a small environment like this with other people who are having success, so you can hear what they're doing to have that success. So that is all. See you later.